Good morning, everybody out there in YouTube land, all my peeps in the chat room and all my lurkers and all my Memorex viewers that'll see it later. Glad to have you with me today on the 18th day of August on a Thursday, 2016. Month is flying by. Weather here in Indiana is overcast today. They're calling for some rain, and we could still use some rain, so I'm not going to complain about it. August on a third. I'll get that thing shut off so it stops talking back to me. There we go. Oh, gee whiz, what's going on? Well, in my little world, I worked up the loom yesterday and started a weaving project that I'd been wanting to get underway for some time, and need to get out in the garden and get some work done, but that I have to go out there and get soaking wet in the rain for it. So we'll bide our time. It'll get done when it gets done. Oh, gee whiz, we've got a lot of news to cover today. There's there's all kinds of things going on. First off, you might want to know that if you're up to speed or paying any attention to the patriotic community of the fellers that are in jail out there in Oregon, their pretrial comes up on Monday, and that's pretty important stuff there. So might be wanting to pay attention to what's going on with them. I know Sergeant Moe has got some stuff on her page about it. She's got a video up that explains some on it, so you can look her up there on Facebook and find out more about that. That's coming up. And let's see, then we've got the on BB4SP. Document shows Soros invested in Senate Gang of Eight immigration bill. And it says, this is off Daily Caller. It says, left-wing billionaire George Soros nonprofit network, the Open Society Foundations, or it's called the OSF, is confident about future success of its work in the field of immigration activism and may embark on a massive campaign on immigration issues in the near future. That's according to a candid 62-page document reviewing OSF's work on immigration reform discussed in May at the group's board meeting in Montgomery, Alabama. The document, which is one of 2,500 stolen from OSF in a massive hack and released over the weekend, shows that Soros Group believes that its $7.7 million investment in groups pushing for immigration reform was responsible for the passage of the Senate 2013 Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill. The bill, which was introduced by a bipartisan group of senators known as the Gang of Eight, passed the upper chamber 68-32. After an attempt at comprehensive immigration reform failed in 2007, OSF began investing heavily in a campaign to enable the field to create the necessary conditions to security within 5 years. To achieve that goal, the Soros Network U.S. Programs Advisory Board authorized the creation of the Immigration Innovation Fund. Soros committed $15 million over the course of 3 years to fund the initiative. In the wake of President Obama's first amnesty executive action, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which was announced in June 2012, OSF mobilized to form a coalition of activist groups and labor unions operating under the name Alliance for Citizenship. OSF gave A4C $4.7 million through April 2014 to act as a coordinating CODI and a conduit for pass-through funding. Soros Group spent $7.725 million in all in 2013 to support immigration reform. Accordingly, Serial Pass, I guess it's pronounced, that spending was integral in getting immigration reform passed in the Senate. OSPC's significant investment in CIR and A4C specifically led to the passage of a historic bipartisan bill through the Senate. The document reads, and there's more to this if you want to read it, You can click on the link. All these links to these URLs are in the description of the video. So you're welcome to read up more on that if you want to. Right along so that we don't take all day with everything here. Let's see. The next one here is off of the Common Sense Show, Dave Hodges. And it says, the noose is tightening around Clinton, Comey, and Lynch. As the saying goes, if her lips are moving, she's lying. Two key members of the House Oversight Committee and Judiciary Committee are revealing evidence taken directly from sworn testimony from Hillary Clinton, which may lead to perjury charges against the presidential candidate. There is a modern-day XYZ affair brewing. If any of the big three is implicated in criminal activity related to Clinton Foundation, the other two will be headed to prison as well. XYZ are Hillary Clinton, James Comey, and Loretta Lynch. Renewed congressional interest in Clinton's criminality. Republicans Jason Chavez and Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte have been relentless in their pursuit of legal charges being filed against Hillary Clinton. The two Republicans sent a letter to the U.S. District Attorney, or let's say, no, that's not correct. Let me read that again. The two Republicans sent a letter to the U.S. D.C. Attorney. In the letter, two presented evidence of information which clearly demonstrated that Clinton knowingly presented false testimony during an October 22nd, 2015 interrogation in relation to the Benghazi affair. Clinton was subsequently questioned about her illegal private email server, and Clinton does what she does best. She lied, and she lied repeatedly. James Comey stays one step ahead of the burning bridge. Late yesterday afternoon, Fox News confirmed that a congressional source confirmed that the House Government Oversight Committee had received a heavily redacted FBI summary of Hillary Clinton's session last month with the FBI, or with FBI agents who interviewed her about the use of private server for government business. Heavily redacted? What does Comey have to thumb his nose at congressional inquiry by redacting evidence requested by Congress? Why would Comey do such a thing? The answer to that question can be summed up as birds of a feather flock together. Or perhaps Ben Franklin put it more accurately, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. On the surface, Comey's refusal to fully cooperate with Congress seems inexplicable at this point, unless you consider the character and lack of integrity of James Comey. If the Clintons are Bonnie and Clyde, then Comey is John Dillinger. Comey's skeletons are getting exposed. How does a man with absolutely no law enforcement experience become head of the most modern crime-fighting organization in the United States? The simple answer is Comey is complicit in Hillary Clinton's criminality. In the capacity of FBI director, Comey has turned this organization into Hillary's lapdog of personal protection from her criminality. If Fox News is really after Clinton, then one would think that they would begin to impugn the integrity of James Comey, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why Fox is ignoring what is publicly available. Comey should be immediately removed from office and charged with obstruction of justice. Government accomplices to HSBC's money laundering, Comey and Clinton. Please allow me to introduce you to John Cruz. According to the former senior vice president of HSBC Bank, John Cruz, he states that the Clinton Foundation profited from HSBC's terrorist affiliations related to money laundering at the bank. I previously documented how FBI Director Comey served on the board of directors at HSBC during the time of the cover-up of criminal activities. Comey is not the only senior federal government official implicated in the crimes of HSBC, either through participation or cover-up. In a recent radio interview, I asked Cruz about Comey, and he was aware that Comey had been on the board of directors at HSBC Bank and was responsible for money moving. We now know that moving money meant in part involving moving money to the Clinton Foundation. Therefore, we are surprised that Comey gave Clinton free pass for her illegal emails. Additionally, should we be surprised that Comey heavily redacted emails sent to Congress regarding Clinton's perjury in her testimony to Congress? Comey should be in jail for obstruction of justice. radio interview should answer the question about why Comey would heavily redact FBI documents related to Clinton's alleged perjury when being interviewed by the FBI. Simply put, if Clinton goes down, so does Comey. Additionally, there will be other federal casualties as well, and her name is Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General. Government accomplice to HSBC's money laundering, Loretta Lynch. Loretta Lynch, guilty of obstruction of justice, and we are surprised that she won't for the emails. Cruz went far and wide with his allegations that HSBC Bank laundered money for terrorists and the drug cartels. DHS told him to go away. Manhattan District Attorney told him that this would cost him his job, and that is if he is lucky. The head of the New York Eastern District covered up the crime as well after Cruz provided her with irrefutable proof of his allegations. And who was the head of the Eastern District of New York? Why, it was none other than Loretta Lynch, the current Attorney General. Lynch, to cover her legal behind, HSBC guilty of violation of the banking security laws, but ignored the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the money laundering and the violation of national laws on terrorism. I asked Cruz why Lynch would pursue the one charge and not the other, and he told my audience that she could prosecute on a far lesser charge to make the charge go away. The fact actually came up in the confirmation of Lynch's nomination to the AG position, but it was quickly swept under the rug. However, the Cruz 2-hour testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee was so damning that the Senate had to withhold Lynch's nomination vote for 3 weeks in order to let things calm down. The XYZ affair, Clinton, Comey, and Lynch, is a house of cards. If Clinton is taken down by Congress, Comey and Lynch are headed to prison for obstruction and being accomplice after the fact. Comey could actually be charged with money laundering and trading with the Enemies Act. What should Congress do? If Congress truly wants justice in this matter and is not merely grandstanding, they need to make a deal. Special prosecutors need to be appointed by Congress. The investigation of any length is not needed because almost all the evidence is readily available, as the article strongly suggests. 2 prosecutors should simply be charged with making a deal with either Comey or Lynch in order to bring down Clinton. In one room, they bring in Loretta Lynch. In an adjacent room, they bring in James Comey. 2 special prosecutors interview both suspects at the same time. The offer is simple. The first of the 2 that offers testimony that will bring down Clinton with regard to money laundering, trading with the Enemies Act, funding her presidential campaign with foreign terrorist money through the Clinton Foundation, and multiple counts of perjury gets the nicer prison cell. Further, Donald Trump needs to relentlessly repeat these events in the public. The dumbed down sheep who get their news from CNN need to be confronted with the truth. The GOP needs to make these events their continuing mantra. Let confirmation bias take its course. In conclusion, last night my family had dinner in Wickenburg, Arizona, and as we were leaving the small town of 6,000 people, adjacent to the highway was a very large billboard that consisted of this message: Hillary for Prison 2016. The American people are ready for the truth. The American people are tired of the politicians and their lies, manipulation, and corruption. And then there is a picture of George Patton, and it has a quote of him on it. It says, "Politicians are lowest form of life on earth. Liberal Democrats are the lowest form of politicians." So there you have that off of the Common Sense Show. And the next one that we have is off of the Conservative Tribune. It says, breaking: man connected to Clintons and mentioned by Trump team found dead. An author and researcher who wrote extensively about Clinton family scandals was found dead Monday of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, the Political Insider reported. Victor Thorne, a 50-year-old writer for American Free Press, had published more than 20 books, including 3 on the Clintons. He was also one of the people whom Trump surrogate Roger Stone dedicated a 2015 book he co-authored, The Clintons, War on Women. American Free Press said it had contacted some in the State College, Pennsylvania, police who said they found someone dead Monday morning but couldn't comment on Thorne's passing. There was something that occurred on Monday morning, but I don't know if we've released any identities or any details about it at this time, the police source said. When asked if the person knew if the department could provide any updates, the source said, I don't know what the status of the investigation is. I've not seen the detective that's in charge of that yet today. They'll release it as soon as they can. I don't know what the holdup is or the details at this point. Thorne's most recent book was called Crowning Clinton: Why Hillary Shouldn't Be in the White House. On American Free Press website, the description of the book said it provided groundbreaking information that mainstream media sources only caught up with months or even years afterward, if they had the courage to even touch it at all, including more than 50 one-on-one interviews with experts. This collection taps into some of the nation's most astute political minds to present a preponderance of evidence as to why Hillary and Bill's return to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue would be disastrous for America. For example, all in one place, you'll find the real truth about the Benghazi scandal, Hillary's covering up of Bill's sexual assaults against innocent victims, the email scandal that has rocked her candidacy, and recent shady business dealings and money laundering, and much more, it added. Coming so soon after the death of a Democratic National Committee staffer allegedly linked to WikiLeaks, Thorne's death is going to throw conspiracy theories into overdrive. Stay tuned. I doubt we've heard the last of this one. So there you have that. BizPack Review. House committee just dropped a video showing Hillary's multiple contradictions about her emails. Hillary Clinton's many contradictions about her emails are now featured in a new video presented by the U.S. House Oversight Committee. The video, released Monday, showcases the Democratic presidential nominee's inconsistencies during testimony in the federal investigation into her private email server. Entitled, Were Hillary Clinton's Statements False? The video showed alternating remarks by Clinton and FBI Director James Comey. At one point, Hal Clinton stated that she had only one server and that she turned over all of her emails to the State Department, but those comments were then contradicted by Comey's testimony. In another segment, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio questioned Clinton on the way attorneys searched for work-related emails. I'm asking how it was done. Did somebody physically look at the 62,000 emails, or did you use search terms, date parameters? Jordan asked in the video clip. I want to know the specifics. They did all of that. They also went through every single email, Clinton answered. Cutting away to Comey's next, the video showed him stating, lawyers doing the sorting for Secretary Clinton in 2014 did not individually read the content of all her emails as we did for those available to us. The 2.5-minute video was released as congressional Republicans sent a letter to the Justice Department seeking to charge Clinton with perjury. So there you have that. Off of BizPack Review, CNN's Cuomo comes right out and admits it. We couldn't help Hillary any more than we have. CNN, pretty much the entire American media, save Fox News, is sold out for Hillary Clinton. Witness CNN Chris Cuomo, or I'm wondering how that's actually pronounced, Cuomo, Cuomo. Anyway, the man who called Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort a liar and debated Rudy Giuliani for 32 break-less minutes on the ridiculous liberal interpretation of Trump's Second Amendment statement, waxed eloquent during 2014 segment during which he and another host were discussing Clinton's potential entry into the race. It's a problem because she's doing what they call in politics freezing pockets, because the donors are giving her money thinking she's going to run. That means they're not going to have available money for other candidates if she doesn't, Cuomo said. And I don't think she's going to give it to them. We couldn't help her any more than we have. She's got a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign, so it had better happen. Hey, at least he's being honest for once, regardless if it hurts them in the ratings, because It clearly has. The liberal media has determined to ride that broken down mule all the way to the halls of power because for them, ideology is what matters. And theirs is clearly the ideology of the left. So there you have the media admitting that they've been spurring her on. The next one is off of the Express, and it says, NASA says massive earthquake is 99.9% likely to rock LA. A huge earthquake is 99.9% likely to hit Los Angeles within the next 2 years, scientists from NASA have said. The group's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena has warned, have warned a series of mini tremors beneath the surface of the city of Angels have caused pressure to build up. In 2014, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake hit the town of La Habra in Southern California, and the experts from NASA say that there is still some leftover strain from that, which will almost definitely hit before April of 2018. JPL geophysicist Dr. Andrea Donnellan said when the La Habra earthquake happened, it was relieving some of that stress, and it actually shook some of the upper segments in the LA basin and moved those a little more. There's enough energy stored to produce about a magnitude 6.1 to 6.3 earthquake. Dr. Donnellan and her colleagues reached the conclusion that an LA quake is almost inevitable after using radar and GPS to track all tremors in LA. They then measured the probability of an earthquake striking within the 60-mile radius of LA and reached the conclusion that an earthquake of 5.0 or higher will strike the Southern California city. However, Robert Graves, a U.S. Geological Survey seismologist and the Southern California coordinator for earthquake hazards, has cast his doubts about the study from JPL. Mr. Graves said the 99.9% number, I don't know the method that was used to drive that, but basically that says that's going to happen. And that level of certainty, to my knowledge, is just not attainable. We can never be that certain, he says. So there you have that information. Be interesting to see what becomes of that. The next one we have here is off of riseearth.com. And I had to chuckle on this, but it may not be all that funny. It says, state now claims it owns the wind, taxing renewable energy out of existence. This is from Wyoming. Shortly after they realized the potential for wind energy creation in Wyoming, renewable energy companies began constructing turbines on private property and then selling the clean power they generated to the residents. However, shortly after the venture began, Wyoming government officials acting on behalf of the fossil fuel interests moved in for the kill. The state legislature has asked this question: who owns the wind? Without much debate, Wyoming legislator quickly determined that the state does. Unlike any other resource derived from the use of private property, which the property owner maintains from surface ownership, the state of Wyoming claims the wind is different. So lawmakers decide to tax it. For the last several years, Wyoming has been taxing the power generated by wind turbines at $1 per megawatt. Do not mistake this tax as part of the regular taxes that already apply to businesses like income tax and employment taxes. No, this is an entirely new tax based solely on the assertion by Wyoming officials that they own the wind. Wind is different than anything else. It's not like a mineral, which is something that sits there on the ground until you go after it, says Bob Whitten, chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Landowners. It's not like water that can be put in a lake or pond. The wind blows in and blows out, and you can't put in a pond, pipeline, truck, or train to send it somewhere. As general principle, all rights and property are assignable and transferable and alienable. You can transfer the title, says Stickley. Moreover, Anecdotally, there are situations already where landowners have severed wind rights. However, thanks to Wyoming officials, these rights no longer apply. This move by the state is not in the interest of people, nor is it even in the interest of raising funds for the government. In the 4 years that it's been law, the state has only raised $15 million from taxing the wind. The move is purely regulatory and meant to stifle new businesses who threaten the dinosaur coal and fossil fuel industry's grip on energy production. Just about every legislator we've met with asks us, "You tell us how much we can tax you before we put you out of business," said Bill Miller, chief executive of Power Company of Wyoming, which is planning the wind farm. "I just shake my head and say zero." He said that the state was at risk of taxing this project out of existence, and this is by design. There is a current tax of $1 per megawatt hour of wind produced in Wyoming. However, other bills could require setting this amount and perhaps as much as 12 per megawatt hour. Of course, the wind industry isn't completely innocent in this debacle either. For years, many of these companies have flourished thanks largely in part to federal and state subsidies. These subsidies created an artificial boom which sent out not only wind technology prices through the roof, but also solar. However, as we see now, the government begins turning off the faucet of subsidies, prices go down. One of the reasons Wyoming is levying this tax is because of these very subsidies. However, like Miller said earlier this year, if they wouldn't be forced to pay higher taxes on the wind, they wouldn't even need the federal money. This cessation of the flow of federal money to start companies isn't stopping the big energy companies from using their influence over government to wage war on their renewable competition. As the Free Thought Project reported earlier this year, while Nevadians were celebrating the holidays under solar-powered lights, the Nevada Public Utilities Commission voted unanimously to increase a monthly fee on solar customers by 40%, while reducing the amount they get paid for excess power sold to the grid. Adding insult to injury, they made the rate changes retroactive, sabotaging consumer investments in solar energy. This single move by government regulators is effectively killing the solar industry in Nevada and has put an end to the surge of people seeking to detach from the grid, harnessing their own energy from the sun. Just as importantly, it serves to protect the profits of Nevada's public utility company, Nevada Energy. Nevada Energy, a regulated monopoly with an authorized rate of return, is unabashed in saying that the surge in renewable energy is cutting into their profits. Last year, the company owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway got Senator Patricia Farley to draft the amendment that shifted the state's net metering over to the PUC. In their view, solar customers don't pay their fair share to maintain the grid. As the energy monopolies of the 1900s attempted to prop up their soon-to-be obsolete industry, the smart and ethical ones will figure out ways to adapt. However, as in the case, the majority of the time, those with access to the state will prop themselves up the only way they know how, with government. And my grandmother's rolling over in her grave. The next one says LibertyParkPress.com. 3 U.S. cities responsible for half of the 2015 murder increases, says WAPO. A conservative opted piece in Thursday's Washington Post lays the blame on 3 U.S. cities for the least half of the rise in the homicide body count last year, which has opened the door to what the authorities call hype about new violent crime wave. Those cities are Chicago, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. That fact is underscored by a report on Thursday's Chicago Tribune revealing, and this is a quote, nearly 100 people have been shot in Chicago in less than a week, pushing the number of shooting victims so far this year to more than 2,500, about 800 more than this time last year, according to data kept by the Tribune. Between last Friday afternoon and early Thursday, at least 99 people were shot in the city, 24 of them fatally. At least 9 people were killed on Monday alone, the deadliest day in Chicago in 13 years, according to Tribune data. Among the wounded that day was 10-year-old boy shot in the back as he played on his front porch in Lawndale. The number of shooting victims in Chicago stood at 2,514 Thursday morning. At this time last year, 1,725 people had been shot. Good gravy, that's almost 800 more people. The city has not seen this level of gun violence since 1990s, a trend the police department has blamed on lax gun laws and feuding gang factions. But according to Washington Post authors Mark Holden and Ronald Serpis, statements on rising murders are highly misleading. The truth is that Americans are still experiencing hard-won historic lows in crime. They refer to an article Heather McDonald at the Manhattan Institute that said homicides have increased nearly 17% in 56 largest cities last year. She was apparently echoing something said by GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump during the Republican convention last month, but Holden and Serpis are taking this crime assertion to task, sort of. Their piece acknowledged the crime problem in the big cities without noting that one thing Chicago, Baltimore, and District of Columbia have in common are the long-running liberal Democrat administrations and restrictive gun control policies those administrations stubbornly cling to. Here's what the WAPO opinion piece said in part, and this is a quote. By 2014, violent crime had fallen by half from its 1991 peak. Property crime was down 49%. Crime overall was 66% lower in major cities. No one disputes this decades-long trend. This rise in homicide is alarming on its face, but half of 2015's murder increase occurred in Baltimore, Chicago, and the District, the very cities that those pushing the crime panic repeatedly use as examples, unquote. This does pose something of a problem for the gun prohibition lobby, which uniformly supports the liberal anti-gun agenda. While crime statistics have declined over most of America, gun ownership has gone up sharply, as noted by a recent report from Crime Prevention Research Center during President Obama's administration. The number of concealed handgun permits has soared to over 14.5 million, a 215% increase since 2007. Among the report's findings were an increase of 1.73 million new concealed carry permits and licenses in 2015, eclipsing the previous record of 1.69 million new carry permits over the previous year. And according to the Daily Signal's analysis of the CPRC report, these armed citizens are less likely to commit crimes than other people. As noted, that news report, the quote says, from 2007 through 2015, permits issued by state and local governments increased by 215% to more than 14 million Americans, according to the data. The study compared permit holders to police who committed 703 crimes from 2015 to 2007, and 113 of those were firearm violations, unquote. This belies years of rhetoric from gun prohibition lobby that increased gun ownership would lead to more violent crime. More guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens hasn't had that result. The violence in Baltimore, Chicago, and District is largely the work of criminal element that shouldn't have guns in the first place. So there you have that information. And the next one that we have is off of Breitbart.com. And it says, Iran ransom. Feds claim $1.7 billion paid in full, but won't explain how. It says the State Treasury Department, the State and Treasury Departments both told Breitbart News that the U.S. government transferred $1.3 billion, which was part of the same settlement for which the $400 million was initial payment in January. However, despite numerous requests, neither state nor Treasury would provide an answer on how the Obama administration allegedly transferred to Iran the remaining $1.3 billion. $1.3 billion was similarly delivered to Iran in the same spy novel-like fashion as the $400 million in cash pallets of foreign currency. If the money was not transferred in cash, that could raise questions about President Obama's explanation that cash was necessary because there was no banking relationship. See, trying to get it scroll up here a little bit. There we go. At issue is not simply the curious timing of the $400 million cash handoff, which took place hours before the hostages were released and was described as ransom payment in Iranian media reports that cited senior Iranian defense officials. The administration has denied ransom claims, and the delivery was made in January. The White House publicly acknowledged the full payment amount. Another issue is the need to transfer the $400 million in foreign cash. I think it's trying to play something here. Good gravy. Let's see what happens. Trying to play. Good grief. I need to stop this foolishness. See if I can get her to stop here. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. Like the way I talk back to my computer? Sure, I got him stopped yet. There we go. I think that did it. Ran me out of breath. Okay, where was I up here? All right, the issue is not simply the curious timing of the $400 million cash handoff, which took place hours before hostages were released and was described as a ransom payment in Iranian media reports that cited senior Iranian defense officials. The Obama administration has denied the ransom claims and has said that when the delivery was made in January, the White House publicly acknowledged the full. Another issue is the need to transfer the $400 million in foreign cash pallets delivered to Iranian guards, a detail that was not disclosed by the administration until its revelation last week by the Wall Street Journal. Regarding the need for cash, Obama has explained that the U.S. does not have a banking relationship with Tehran. The only bit of news that is relevant on this is the fact that we paid cash, Obama told reporters last Friday. The reason we had to give them cash is because we are so strict in maintaining sanctions answers that we don't have a banking relationship with Iran, and we couldn't send them a check or the money, the president added. It has been widely reported that the $400 million was part of a dispute that arose after Iran in the late 70s had purchased U.S. fighter jets while Tehran was still. After the country turned into an enemy in 1979, the U.S. halted delivery of the military equipment, thus triggering an international case. Iran was asking the Hague arbitrators for $10 billion. Following years of negotiations, the Obama administration finally agreed to settle the case for $1.7 billion, the initial $400 million plus another $1.3 billion in interest. Rutgers reported that the $1.3 billion was transferred to Iran by the Treasury Department's Judgment Fund. The fund, according to its website, says is a permanent, indefinite appropriation available to pay judicially and administratively according to or ordered monetary awards against the United States. The Judgment Fund is also available to pay amounts owed under compromise agreements negotiated by the U.S. Department of Justice and settlement of claims arising under the actual imminent litigation, if a judgment on the merits would be payable from the Judgment Fund. Spokesman for the Judgment Fund confirmed to this reporter that the payment for the compromise was that was reached on interest of approximately $1.3 billion has indeed been provided out of the fund. The fund spokesperson refused to comment on the mechanics of how a settlement payment was made. The spokesperson did not rely on a follow-up question about whether the remaining $1.3 billion was transferred in cash or by any other means. When asked about how the remaining $1.3 billion was transferred, a spokesman for the State Department replied that the agency had nothing to add beyond what the President and Secretary have already said on the subject. The spokesman or spokesperson confirmed that the $0.3 billion was indeed paid in full to Iran, but refused to provide comment to two separate requests about how the money was transferred. The lack of clarity has led to the raising of questions about whether the remainder was paid. Republican of Arkansas, that, or no, I guess it's of Alaska, said that due to Obama administration, he is unsure if the U.S. still owed any remaining money on that $1.7 billion judgment. I don't know yet whether there's $1.3 billion left, he said. The administration has continued to disassemble and stonewall Congress on these very questions. In January, we were asking these questions. Writing at National Review Online, former prosecutor Andrew McCarthy asked, what's the story with the other $1.3 billion in this deal, the money Iran is supposed to get in addition to the $400 million in cash? Bloomberg in June reported on the $1.7 billion, which the news agency claimed was transferred by the U.S. Treasury to Iran's central bank in January. Senator Deb Fischer put out a press release similarly stating that in January 2016, the U.S. Treasury transferred $1.7 billion from the judgment fund to Iran's central bank. Meanwhile, while the Obama administration has strongly denied any link between cash transfer and the release of the hostages on the same day, the Wall Street Journal cited unnamed U.S. officials acknowledging, as the newspaper phrased it, that Iranian negotiators on the prisoner exchange said they wanted the cash to show they had gained something tangible. Sparked an outcry with Republicans, including Donald Trump, accusing the White House of paying ransom. Cotton directly accused Obama of paying $1.7 billion ransom for the U.S. hostages. This breaks with the longstanding U.S. policy, put a price on the head of an American, and has led to Iran illegal seizures of Americans, he told the Journal. Republican Paul Ryan fumed. If true, this report confirms our longstanding suspicion that the administration paid a ransom in exchange for Americans unjustly detained in Iran. Another chapter in the ongoing saga of misleading the American people to sell this dangerous nuclear deal, he added. Former CIA agent Phil Houston alleged Obama displayed a high level of deception with the Iran cash transfer. Meanwhile, the general description of the cash transfer, viewed by Fortune as having the air of skullduggery. Times' Carl Vick conceded, quote, "It does look fishy as all get out," unquote. I couldn't have said that better myself. That one, and the next one we have is off of the oathkeepers.org. It says, Oath Keepers responsible to SPLC mouthpiece Waco Jim Kavanaugh's attack on patriotic veterans and gun owners. And this reads, Oath Keeper founder Stuart Rhodes. I find it ironically fitting that the SPLC would trot out demonstrated oath breaker Waco Jim Kavanaugh to be their federal law enforcement shill in this hit piece. He presided over the single worst disaster and Royal Charlie Foxtrot in FBI history and is directly responsible for the fiery deaths of dozens of innocent women and children at Waco, a travesty that even managed to outdo the black eye the FBI got from their cluster at Ruby Ridge. What a great spokesman. Waco was such a complete disaster that both local and federal law enforcement agencies hold classes on what this guy did wrong, holding Waco up as an example of what not to do to avoid a repeat, with no more Wacos being cautionary watchword of the class. This is really the guy the SPLC expects competent local cops to listen to. What the Southern Preposterous Lie Center fears most, a uniting of the American warrior class. This heavily handed smear video is clearly aimed at trying to convince local cops that we, the patriotic military and police veterans, and our patriotic gun owner brothers and sisters are the enemies of the police rather than the flag burning American hating Marxist ideologies who are destroying our republic and currently out there killing cops across the nation. And notice how many times Waco Jim refers to oath keepers and to the oath of office as he tries to convince police that the only way they can really uphold their oath is by refusing to listen to us patriots when we point out clear examples of federal government abuse of power and instead just be obedient force multipliers when the feds decide to teach a local patriot a lesson. I find it encouraging that the SPLC is so worried about our efforts to reach out to local police that their whole video is essentially focused on trying to counter those efforts. It shows you what the SPLC fears. They fear us uniting the American warrior class by getting local cops, many of whom are also military veterans, to see local veterans and patriotic gun owners as their natural allies in the preservation of our Constitution and the rights of the people to life, liberty, and property by means of responsible and effective use of our rights to bear arms at the local level. All concepts the Marxist left hates. They want police to see us military and police veterans as their enemies, and they want to pit the American warrior class against itself with cops versus veterans. Note how the SPLC ignores all the times when oath keepers and other patriotic veterans have directly teamed up with local law enforcement to stand united against terrorists and criminal thugs. The SPLC MO ignore our very well-documented support for the good cops in local departments, such as our Operation Protect the Protectors, where we worked closely with local police as we stood guard outside military recruitment centers across the nation after the Chattanooga, Tennessee terror attacks. And SPLC ignores how Ferguson, Missouri, we got along just fine with the officers of the Ferguson PD as we stood guard over minority-owned businesses and apartments, protecting them from murderous arsonists who wanted to burn them to the ground, including apartments with children inside. Something the SPLC refuses to acknowledge is that during the riots in Ferguson, we protected 3 minority-owned businesses, a black-owned baker, a Korean-owned beauty supply store, and the Asian-owned Chinese restaurant, along with white-owned dentist office and law firm. We also protected the residents of apartments above those businesses, so we protected lives, not just property, against the deadly threat of arsonists who had personally walked up during the day and shouted up to us that they would be back at night to burn these so-and-so buildings to the ground. True to their word, the arsonists came back at night and threw some improvised incendiary devices on the roof, but our veteran volunteers were ready and quickly put them out before they could light the roof on fire. And contrary to the lies of the SPLC, there were minority oath keepers on those rooftops too, not just white veterans. Not that skin color matters to us, but it sure does to the SPLC, which likes to try to twist anything done by Americans on the political right as being motivated by racism. Among our volunteers in Ferguson was the current serving Filipino special warfare operator who was on leave at the time. There are several news reports recounting the rather humorous incident when some protester yelled out, "You're the KKK," and our Filipino veteran pulled down the scarf he was wearing over his face to keep warm and looked down from the rooftop and replied, "I didn't realize the KKK was expanding their recruitment opportunities." And the SPLC ignores the times we stood shoulder to shoulder with local cops against criminal gangs and assisted in keeping communities safe from violent criminals, such as when we assisted Gilbert, uh, West Virginia PD in searching for an armed and dangerous fugitive, or when our volunteers provided security for entire town of Gilbert, West Virginia during their annual Trail Fest event. And they also ignore our South Carolina chapter, excellent Operation Backstop, which was put in place last year after the targeted shooting of several police officers, such as the officer Goforth in Texas, who was shot in the back of the head while pumping gas. In response, our South Carolina chapter instructed South Carolina Oath Keeper members to overwatch and protect police against potential terror attacks when they stop for gas, food, coffee, etc., and even built such a close relationship with our local departments that they even backed them up on traffic stops. In the wake of the recent deadly attacks on police in Dallas and Baton Rouge, we are taking that Operation Backstop national and will be overwatching local police across the nation, helping to watch their six whenever they are particularly vulnerable, such as while getting gas or a bite to eat, as well as offering our assistance in the event of any other terrorist or attack unrest in our communities. And of course, the SPLC will never mention how we called on our member to reach out to their local police and express our condolences after those horrible terrorist attacks on police in Dallas and Baton Rouge by radical racist and Marxist ideologists. And we also called on our members to offer their direct support and protection for their local cops as part of the National Operation Backstop, and to offer our protection to police families as part of our Related Family Safe program, where our military and police veterans offer to protect any police military family that has been threatened with violence. Nor will SPLC mention how our Baton Rouge chapter directly offered to stand with Baton Rouge police against any further attacks on them by those same radical extremists. Can't mention any of that. Instead, the SPLC tries to create artificial connection between us and cop killers such as Gerald and Amanda Miller, who killed 2 Las Vegas Metro officers, while, of course, ignoring the fact that some of the founding members and leadership of Oath Keepers were Las Vegas Metro officers. My first national vice president, retired Las Vegas Metro officer Dave Freeman, and I can tell you that we still have members who are currently serving Metro cops. Or that Bundy Ranch, we told Millers to leave and not come back when we found out Gerald Miller was a felon. I know because I was there and part of that decision. I encourage police officers to take a look at not just our words, but our actual deeds and judge for yourselves who actually has your back against cop killer terrorists, jihadists, and looting, burning, raping, and murdering thugs who take advantage of any civil unrest. And then take a hard look at the Marxist ideology clearly at work at the SPLC for Marxist bill heirs or their carefully coddled and well-funded leftist community organizer pals in the Leadership Matters movement is going to stand up next to you, wear rifle plates and full battle rattle with for to help you hold the line against evil. That article goes on, but I think that pretty much sums it up. Read the rest of it. I only read maybe a third. So if you want to read the rest of that, there it is. But it's very informative. All that was what I was. So, you know, if you want to educate yourself, that's a pretty good article. I have this stuff. I was amazed when I read it because I could myself. So I thought, maybe there's some of you that listen to this broadcast that may not be aware of this, and if you're not, you might need to be educated on this one. Rhonda Gessner, she writes a column, and it says, "A Killer, Sweet Poison, a Must Read." 2000 started getting very sick, stomach spasms, and she was having a hard time getting her was a major chore. It took everything she had just to get out of bed. She was in so much pain. She had undergone several tissue and muscle biopsies. Put her house, insurance, etc., and her oldest daughter's name were to be taken care of. She also wanted her last hurrah, so she planned a trip to Florida, basically in a wheelchair, for March 22nd. On March 19th, I called her to ask her most recent test event, and she said they didn't find anything on the test, but they believe she has MS. I recalled an article a friend of mine emailed me, and I asked my sister if she drank diet soda. She told me that she did. As a matter of fact, she was getting ready to crack one open at that moment. I told her not to open it and to stop drinking the diet soda. I emailed her an article my friend, a lawyer, had sent. My sister called me within 32 hours after our phone conversation and told me she had stopped drinking the diet soda and she could walk. The muscle spasms went away. She said she didn't feel 100%, but she sure felt a lot better. She told me she was going to her doctor with this article and would call me when she got home. Well, she called me, and she said her doctor was amazed. He's going to call all of his MS patients and find out if they consume artificial sweeteners of any kind. In a nutshell, she was being poisoned by the aspartame in the diet soda and literally dying a slow and miserable death. When she got to Florida, March 22nd, all she had to take was one pill, and that was a pill for the aspartame poisoning. She is well on her way to a complete recovery, and she is walking, no wheelchair. This article saved her life. If it says sugar-free on the label, do not even think about it. I have spent several days lecturing at the World Environmental Conference on aspartame, marketed as NutraSweet, Equal, and Spoonful. In the keynote address by the EPA, it was announced that in the United States in 2001, there is an epidemic of multiple sclerosis and systematic lupus. It was difficult to determine exactly what toxin was causing this to be rampant. I stood up and said that I was there to lecture on exactly that subject. I will explain why aspartame is so dangerous. When the temperature of this sweetener exceeds 86 degrees Fahrenheit, the wood alcohol in aspartame converts to formaldehyde and then to formic acid, causes metabolic acidosis. Is the poison toxicity mimics, among other conditions, multiple sclerosis. To such a degree that we have seen patients with systematic lupus become acetonic. Those diagnosed, most of the symptoms disappear. And during his recent visit to hospice, a nurse stated that 6 of her friends who were heavy Diet Coke addicts had all been diagnosed with MS. This is beyond coincidence. Diet soda is not a diet product. It is chemically altered, multiple sodium, and, which is salt, and aspartame containing product that actually makes you crave carbohydrates. It's far more likely to make you gain weight. These products also contain formaldehyde, which stores in the fat cells, particularly in the hips and thighs. Formaldehyde is an absolute toxin and is used primarily to preserve tissue specimens. Many products we use every day contain this chemical, but we should not store it in our body. Dr. H.J. Roberts stated in his letters that once free of the diet products with no significant increase in exercise, his patients lost an average of 19 pounds over trial period. Aspartame is especially dangerous for diabetics. We found that some physicians who believed that they had patient with retinopathy in fact had symptoms caused by aspartame. The aspartame drives the blood sugar out of control. Thus, diabetes may suffer acute memory loss due to the fact that aspartic acid and phenolphthalein are neurotoxic when taken without the other amino acids necessary for good balance. Treating diabetics is all about balance, especially with diabetics. The aspartame passes the blood-brain barrier, and it then deteriorates the neurons of the brain, causing various levels of brain damage, seizures, depression, manic depression, panic attacks, uncontrollable anger, and rage. Consumption of aspartame causes these same symptoms in non-diabetics as well. Documentation and observation also reveals that thousands of children diagnosed with ADD and ADHD have had complete turnarounds on their behavior when these chemicals have been removed from their diet. So-called behavior modification prescription drugs, Ritalin and others, are no longer needed. Truth be told, they were never needed in the first place. Most of these children were being poisoned on a daily basis with what very foods that were better for them than sugar. It is also suspected that the aspartame in thousands of pallets of Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi consumed by men and women fighting in the Gulf War may be partially to blame for the well-known Gulf War syndrome. Dr. Roberts warns that it can cause birth defects, mental retardation if taken at the time of conception and during early pregnancy. Children are especially at risk for neurological disorders and should never be given artificial sweeteners. There are many different case histories to relate to children that relate to children suffering grand mal seizures and other neurological disturbances, talking about plague of neurological disease directly caused by the case of deadly poison. And this article goes on. It talks about Monsanto in here. You know, there's I think we hit the nail on the head, though. So I suffered this myself, and somebody told me that if I wanted to get out of pain, that I needed to stop drinking Diet Coke. Well, I was hooked on it, and I thought, well, I think they're full of it. I mean, they wouldn't have this on the market if it was dangerous now, would they? But my friend made me a deal. He said, I'll tell you what, you go off of it for a week. Just stay off of it for a week. See if anything improves. If not, go back to drinking it. Well, I went off of it, and 3 days later, my pain was almost gone that I had been suffering with. And then it was about a month later, I started having pains in my legs again, and I hadn't been drinking Diet Coke, and I didn't understand, you know, what's going on. I got to thinking about my diet and what I had been eating. Okay. I go to the refrigerator. I open up the refrigerator, and I take out this pack of yogurt that I had and read the label, and sure enough, it had aspartame in it, and I'd been eating that stuff. Well, that cinched it for me. No more aspartame for this girl. So if you're suffering from pain or any of these conditions or symptoms or anything that they talk about in this article, you need to get yourself off of aspartame. Consider yourself warned. So there you have that. And the next one here is the warm and fuzzy that I like to give you daily. This is off NBC News, and it says, inspired by disabled brother, Michigan teen builds a playground. Braden Gandy had a simple dream, to play at recess alongside his classmates. But for Braden, a 9-year-old who suffers from cerebral palsy, which limits his physical abilities, the playground was never an option. I just had to sit back and watch my friends have fun, said Braden. I really wanted to do what they did. That was until his older brother, 15-year-old Hunter, last year set out to make the young boy's dream a reality. NBC News first introduced the Grandy brothers' story in June of 2014 when the pair set off with Hunter carrying Braden on his back from their home in Temperance, Michigan, and walked 40 miles to the University of Michigan's Ann Arbor campus to raise awareness about cerebral palsy. Along the journey, people cheered them on. The brothers dubbed the trip CP Swagger. All that attention brought the generous donations from the individuals across the country, including from teams of engineers who offered to build a new playground for the community, accessible to people suffering from disabilities. Neighbors rallied around the cause, and together with the Gandys, they raised enough funds to build the playground. Earlier this year, construction began, and Braden could hardly wait. Recovering from surgery at the time, which may allow him to walk on his own one day, he cheered on his brother and other volunteers every day at the construction site. And that all that hard work paid off. This week, NBC News returned to the playground's opening ceremony. For Hunter, watching Braden swing, crawl, and slide over the playground made the journey worth it. It's an amazing feeling, said Hunter. We were able to do this with the support of our community and so many people. So there you have it. I mean, if a 15-year-old teenager can do something good, can cause change in the community, why can't you? All the change begins with you. You might be just one person, but so is Hunter. So with that, we're going to close her down for today, and I want you to go out this afternoon, kick off your shoes, stick your feet down in the grass, take a good deep breath of fresh air, balance yourself, ground yourself, and be glad that you're above ground. And with that, we'll see you back here tomorrow on Friday at noon for another rendition of the news. So glad you could join us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.